Good evening, everybody. It's 5-1 right now. We just wait for another 2-3 minutes before starting. ಸದ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ 5-2 ನಿಮಿಷ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 2-3 ನಿಮಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. We'll just start in 2-3 minutes. Yeah, thank you. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Good evening everybody, and thank you for joining the Now Bharatiyaru webinar. I think we've all seen yesterday what has happened as far as Safura Zargar's bail petition as well. We're at a time in this country where during the pandemic, the government of India has seen it fit to arrest more than 100 people for exercising their right to protest. We've seen this pattern earlier with the Bhima Koregaon arrest as well, where the government has used a particular situation and turned it around on its head. During December, January, and February, the entire country saw scores of people across religion, across class, students, older people come together to defend the constitution. The central government was for the first time, put to a certain hardship. It was being questioned on the streets, on social media platforms, across cities, across villages. And at this particular time, when the COVID pandemic has struck, when people are already struggling, the government has also decided to arrest people. Students have been arrested. A woman who's pregnant has been put in jail. Students' phones have been seized. And all of those who organized the protests have been targeted, while people who instigated the riots, for example, in Delhi, they're roaming free. Those who had a gun in their hands and were roaming around are now free, but those who held a pen in their hand have been arrested. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಡಿಸೆಂಬರು ಮತ್ತೆ ಜನವರಿ ತಿಂಗಳುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಫೆಬ್ರವರಿ ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಇಡೀ ದೇಶನೇ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬಂತು. ಏನು ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಲ್ಲೆ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ರೋ ಈ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ, ಅದ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧವಾಗಿ ಹಳ್ಳಿಲಿ ದೇಶದ ಇಡೀ ನಗರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ನಡೀತು. ಬಹುಶಃ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ ನಂತರ ಇದೇ ಪ್ರಥಮ ಬಾರಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಾ ಇದ್ವು. ಈಗಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಈ ಕರೋನಾ ಸೋಂಕು ಸಹ ಬಂತು. ಈ ಕರೋನಾ ಸೋಂಕು ನಡೀತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಜನ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ತಿಂಡಿಗೆ ಕಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳನ್ನ, ಲಾಯರ್ಗಳನ್ನ, ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಸ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಸ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಸಮುದಾಯನ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ನೆನ್ನೆ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ ನಾವು, ಸಫೂರಾ ಸರ್ಗರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅವರು ಬಸರಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದು, 27 ವಯಸ್ಸಿನ ಒಂದು ಮಹಿಳೆ ಬಸರಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದು ಜೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸಹ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಜೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಲ್ ಕೊಡದೆ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ. ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ ಜೊತೆ 3 ಅತಿಥಿಗಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವತ್ತು. ಅವರು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ನಾನು ಅದನ್ನ ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. In order to discuss this, we have 3 guests with us today. Mr. Laik Khan of United Against Hate, Ms. Kavita Krishnan from All India Progressive Women's Association, Mr. Fawaz Shaheen, who's a researcher with Quill Foundation. They will all be speaking in English, and I will translate it briefly into Kannada. And it's already around 5:10 now, so I think we should go into the discussion so that we have enough time for discussions also later. I'd request each participant to speak for around 15 to 20 minutes so that we can do a translation, and then we can go in for audience questions as well. Audience questions can be sent on chat, and you can also, those of you who are hearing this on YouTube, you can also drop a comment on YouTube as well. I'd first, the order of speakers will be that Mr. Laik Khan will go first. After that, Ms. Kavita Krishnan will go. After that, Mr. Fawaz Shaheen will go. So I'd now request Mr. Laik Khan of United Against Hate to please go ahead. Mr. Laik. Mr. Laik, are you there online? Nawaz, can you just check? Mr. Laik was there online sometime back, but he doesn't seem to be there. Nizam, check ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ ನೀವು? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Laik.
Yeah, I could not open this video. Is it okay?
Just 1 minute. We'll just.
There is some technical issue, I hope.
Just 1 second. We're just trying to sort it out.
Yes.
Can you just check now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Accessible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So very good afternoon, all the participants, guests. First of all, I congratulate the organizers to take up this issue immediately after the Safura Azargar's case yesterday. What had we heard the judicial proceedings and everything, and how a pregnant lady was put behind the bars, who was protesting against the anti-constitutional bill. So, just briefing ahead to it. Right from 2014, we are seeing that there is a continuous persecution of students, activists, and all those who are standing to defend the constitution, all those who are standing to defend the human rights. There is a systematic and continuous persecution of those. Before that, also we have seen in India there used to be communal riots, violence, and all those things. But now, after 2014, it has got systematic procedures, and there is also a great amount of institutional support in terms of the governing agencies, in terms of institutions which is ruling the law and order of this country. There is a great amount of support to all this violence element, what we have seen. Recent in past, there used to be lynching in India. We have seen continuous lynching, what had happened, target killing. We have seen trolling of people online, and especially after this amendment of bill, Citizenship Amendment Act, there were a huge rise of movements across the country, people movement across the country against an unconstitutional bill, against an unconstitutional act. And those movements has spread across the country. It has a greater voice from Aligarh Muslim University. It has a greater voice from Jamia Millia Islamia. And we have seen the way throughout the country, the protest of Shaheen Baghs, which were led by women, especially students, those who are leading the movement from Jamia Millia Islamia. And also there was an assault on Jamia student. The first assault was by the police. They entered into the campus. They entered into campus, vandalized, brutally vandalized, and the way how the police handled the situation. And we have also seen about the Aligarh Muslim University, how brutally the force has been used over there. Different parts of country, the protests were going on, but due to this rise of pandemic, COVID pandemic across the world, the whole world was in danger. The whole globe was in danger, and the different countries were taking systematic measures in order to overcome this pandemic. And in India also, people has responded to it, and people they dropped the movements and everything they dropped, and they were totally involved in fighting the pandemic, fighting the COVID-19. That was a great danger for the country, and the whole system was involved into it. But right at that moment, the police force, especially in the city of Delhi, that's capital of India, the way they are targeting the individuals, the way they are targeting the students, the way they are targeting the social activists, witch hunting of all these, and the way they are threatening them, the way they are subjugating them to different types of violence in custody. So it is completely unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. The witch hunting of students, witch hunting of activists, they have been put behind the bars. And moreover, the way the judiciary is functioning is of great danger for the democracy, especially for Indian democracy. In this difficult times, when the whole country has ruined up economically in order to fight COVID, in order to fight COVID-19, in order to fight this pandemic, the whole country was ready. Though the government was not with a plan of how to handle this COVID-19, how to handle the issues of migrant laborers and all those things, voluntarily, all those people, those who were involved in anti-CA protests were actively busy in social welfare work, were actively busy in social service work, and thereby the government has started targeting those people. Individuals being targeted. What was their crime? That the only crime of these students and activists were that they were defending the Indian constitution. They were defending the human rights. They were defending their rights of right to live in this country. They were defending the right of dignity. So for all these rights, they have been targeted, and they have been put into continuous persecution. Government has failed in different aspects. There was a great violence plotted under the nose of the central government in the capital of this country, Delhi. The whole thing was planned, the whole thing was programmed, and it was executed. It was executed. Everything was known. Everything was known. You can just imagine the the yearly budget of Delhi police is 800 crores. It's double than the budget of Haryana police. The Haryana police almost they have a workforce of 56,000 in Haryana, but they have 3.6 thousand crores as an budget, yearly budget for police department. But in Delhi, for 80,000 cops, there is a budget of 8,000 crores. What were they doing by utilizing all these budgets? When the violence was going on in Delhi, there was no sufficient responses from the government. There was no sufficient, and when this talk has been taken to the Parliament of India, they have given the vague and false reasons in the Parliament. And in order to justify all those false reasons, now they are targeting individuals. Now they are targeting students. Now they are targeting activists. They are putting them behind the bar. And the way the investigation is going on, one case, if one individual gets bail in one case, before they come out from the court hall, the police will be ready with the other case. They just put the other case into their hand. They just put the next FIR into their hand, and again they will be taken into the custody. What kind of system we are living in? What kind of police mechanism they are following? And especially the responses of judiciary. The way judiciary is responding at this time is of serious concern. The independence of judiciary is on stake. Independence of parliament is on stake. The way they have functioned, the parliament, when the whole world was fighting the COVID, there were parliament sessions going on. Parliamentarians were being asked to remove their masks. There was a fall of, they have deliberately made to fall the government of Madhya Pradesh. They made the government there. So all these things were going on at the time when the whole world was fighting COVID-19. We haven't planned anything in this lockdown. Also, we have not properly arranged for the future course. We don't have much medical facilities. We have not planned sufficient for migrant laborers. So all these issues are there, and upon that there is a systematic target going on in Delhi and across the country, in other parts of the country also, in Uttar Pradesh and in other many parts of the country. Youths have been targeted, especially those who have participated into the anti-CAA protest, which is an unconstitutional bill, become an act through the parliament. So the only crime of all these youths, the only crime of all these activists, the only crime of all these students is only that they were standing to defend the Indian constitution. They were standing to withhold the constitutionality of this country. So because of this, they have been targeted. So it is a serious threat to the democracy of this country, and it is high time we need to evolve the alternative measures. If we don't have ways to protest onto the street, if we don't have ways to come out onto the streets and protest, we should plan for alternative measures. We should plan for alternative sources from where we can pressurize the government in order to stop this witch hunting, immediately stop this witch hunting of students, activists, and youth. Thank you.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಲೈಕ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಲೈಕ್ ಜಿ. ಲೈಕ್ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ ನಾನು ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಲೈಕ್ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ 2014ರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಈ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ನೋಡ್ತಿದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕೋಮುವಾದಿಗಳು ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಲ್ಲೆಗಳು ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕಳೆದ 5-6 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು ಲಿಂಚಿಂಗ್ ಕೇಸ್ಗಳಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಲಿಂಚಿಂಗ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಲ್ಲದೆ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರ ಮೇಲೆ ಗುರಿ ಇಟ್ಟು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಲಿಂಚಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಟ್ರೋಲಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾವು ಏನು 2019ರಲ್ಲಿ ಈ CAA ಕಾನೂನು ವಿರುದ್ಧ, CAA ಕಾನೂನು ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ವಿರುದ್ಧವಾಗಿದೆ. ಆ ಕಾನೂನು ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಪೊಲೀಸರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಗಳ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಿ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಒಳಗಡೆ ನುಗ್ಗಿ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳನ್ನ ಹೊಡಿತಿದ್ರು ಸಹ, ಬಡಿತಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವರು ಏನು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು JNU ಯಲ್ಲೂ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ನಾವು AMU ಯಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಇದೇ ರೀತಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಕಡೆ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನ ನೋಡಿದೀವಿ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಈ ಕರೋನಾ ಸೋಂಕು ಬಂದಾಗ CA ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾರು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು, ಅದೇ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನಾಕಾರರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ತೊಡಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು. ಯಾಕೆ ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ತೊಡಗಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಯ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತೂ ಯಾವ್ದು ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಲಾಕ್ಡೌನ್ ಸಹ ಅನ್ಪ್ಲಾನ್ಡ್ ಲಾಕ್ಡೌನ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಅದು ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ವಲಸೆ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕರಿಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಜನಸಾಮಾನ್ಯರಿಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ತಿನ್ನಕ್ಕೆ ಸಹ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಊಟ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸಹ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ CA ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋರೆಲ್ಲ ಈ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಏನು ಈ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನಾಕಾರರು ಇದ್ರು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತು. ಅದು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 100ಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಜನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದ್ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬರಿಗೆ ಬೇಲ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕೇಸಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅವರು ಆಚೆ ಬರಕ್ಕೂ ಸಹ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿನಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಕರೋನಾ ಸೋಂಕು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಬರಕ್ಕೂ ಮುಂಚೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಗಲಭೆಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ಈ ಗಲಭೆಗಳು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾಡಿದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಮೂಗು ಕೆಳಗಡೆನೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ಗೆ 8,000 ಕೋಟಿ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇವ್ರು ಎತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡಿದ್ರು. ಈ ಹರಿಯಾಣ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಪೊಲೀಸರು ಇದಾರೆ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಅರ್ಧ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ 8,000 ಕೋಟಿ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇವ್ರು ಏನು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಈ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಸೋಂಕಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಸೋಂಕು ಶುರು ಆಗಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ಪಾರ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಪಾರ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರು ಮಾಸ್ಕು ಸಹ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಇದ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಅನ್ಪ್ಲಾನ್ಡ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಅವ್ರು ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡೋದಲ್ದೆ ಆ ಕೆಲಸನೂ ಮಾಡೋದಲ್ದೆ ಯಾರಾಗಿ ಈ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಯಾರು ರಿಲೀಫ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರನ್ನೂ ಸಹ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಇದ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ನಾವು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಇದನ್ನ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕೌಂಟರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಇದನ್ನ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಲೈಕ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿ ಅವ್ರ ಮಾತನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸಿದ್ರು. I now request Comrade Kavita Krishnan of IFA to please go ahead and share her thoughts. Comrade Kavita. I'll just unmute you. Yes. Sorry. Are you able to unmute now?
Yes, I think so. Just let me check. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yes. Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, Laik, and thank you everyone for being here. So I'll just get down to it right away and make the points which I want to make. The first thing which occurs to me is that you are seeing currently a situation in America, in the United States of America, where there is a virtual mass peaceful uprising, a revolutionary uprising, if you put it that way, to demand that the provisions of the US Constitution and their Bill of Rights actually be made available to the African American people. And it is demanding accountability for institutional racism and bias within the policing systems and the militarization of the police. They want that to end. I can see many parallels and many resonances with the situation in India, because I think that the anti-CA movement was in many ways similar, where you had citizens, especially citizens of the most oppressed minority, which was particularly being targeted by the Citizenship Amendment Act, because the ruling BJP wanted to find a way to deny citizenship or deny the claim to citizenship that Muslims have in India. But of course, that law was also a law in which anybody who was poor and did not have documentation would stand to lose their citizenship and would then be completely dependent on the government's whims, whether or not you could regain your citizenship and in what shape, right? So loyalty to the government would decide whether or not you were a citizen. This was something which we all can see quite clearly now in the COVID-19 climate, because you can see how people, even those with ration cards and Aadhaar cards, which the Home Minister made very clear will not apply as documents for citizenship. People with ration cards and Aadhaar cards are being denied rations now and are being left to starve. Workers are being denied rations, and you have all witnessed that. We are all witnessing this terrible situation right now. So what the people were fighting for when they were fighting against the CAA was that they were fighting for democracy, they were fighting for the constitution, and they were fighting peacefully. reclaiming of the streets, the presence of the Shaheen Bagh in Delhi and the many other Shaheen Baghs all over the country. Shaheen Bagh, particularly in Delhi, was the only Shaheen Bagh which had actually, you can say, partly blocked a street. But none of the other protests had, for a very long time, for months on end, they had not blocked any streets. But sometime in February, there were some of the protests in Northeast Delhi that did come out to demonstrate at slightly more public spots and public streets rather than continuing to occupy what were sort of side enclaves of protest. And the similarity which I see is that the way in which Donald Trump in America says, oh, well, now this is looting. And so now the looting has started, so this shooting must start. This is all violence, some police station has been burnt or whatever. So some isolated acts of anger and violence are being, and I won't even call it violence, I'll call it protest. Some isolated acts of protest, which are not, of the sit-in variety, are being taken to mean, okay, this is anarchy, this is rioting, and this means we have to get out the military and so on. We have to shoot. Likewise, in India, now when this is happening in America, I was interested to note that Kapil Mishra, the BJP leader, who is himself accused of openly instigating, shamelessly, openly instigating violence, threatening violence, saying that if the Shaheen Baghs are not cleared by the Delhi police, then we will violently do it ourselves. So he tweeted about the US that the US should learn from us. And once the wrong people are on the streets, the right people need to come out and ensure that they get out of the streets, right? So you can imagine what he means by wrong people. So that's African Americans and anti-racists in the USA. And it is anti-CAA protesters and especially the Muslim community in India. And who are the right people? White supremacists there and communal mobs here, basically. And so that's exactly what had happened, that a peaceful protest, even the act of blocking a road, why does somebody block a road? I really want to discuss that in the light of this appalling order that we can see denying bail to Safura Zarka. Because essentially what the judge has said is two things. One is that, oh, well, under UAPA, a crime does not have to be made out prima facie. You do not have to be involved in violence prima facie. Prima facie, if you have blocked a street or you have even supported blocking a street, that's bad enough. And to elaborate his decision to deny bail to Safura, he said that, well, if you play with fire and then one spark somewhere else kind of, results in, it kind of spreads or results in some escalation, that's on you. You played with fire. What is playing with fire? Blocking the street in protest. Now, Safura herself was not at the sites where the street was blocked. But the point is that even supposing she was, or even supposing anybody was, the act of blocking a street is an act of civil disobedience. And civil disobedience is the very essence of democracy. Because civil disobedience is a way of saying, you are not listening to us any other way. We have tried writing you letters. We have tried speaking to our MPs. We have tried speaking to our MLAs. We have tried peacefully fasting for 2 months. We have tried peacefully sitting in sit-ins with our elderly women and our young women and our babies on the streets in the terrible cold, and yet nothing has moved. And now we are forced to escalate that. We are forced to do something more, a little bit more. Nothing violent against any individual. No one was violent against any individual among the protesters. But the blocking of a street is being called playing with fire. And the actual fire that was lit, where people saying "Goli maro salon ko," which was exactly like when the looting starts, the shooting starts. So "Goli maro salon ko" is a Hindi phrase that means shoot the traitors, and it's an abusive phrase. So shoot these, traitors is it's an abusive word used in Hindi. So those who said that, and it wasn't a metaphor. It was not a metaphor. So those who said shoot the traitors incited people who actually picked up guns and went and fired those guns, for instance, at Jamia students, of whom one was Safura Zar. So the person who fired the gun does not face UAPA charges. Those who made ammunition and arms available to rioters in Delhi, in Northeast Delhi, and is charged with so doing, he has gotten bail because the police did not oppose his bail. But they are opposing the bail of persons against whom they have no evidence whatsoever. And I just want to add one more point here, that the kind of sexual slut shaming that is happening of Safura and of other women protesters, anti-CA protesters, what does that mean? Basically, it means that there is no evidence. If there was evidence of Safura's involvement in something that was illegal, then of course that would have been circulating in WhatsApp and so on, saying, oh, look, Safura planned this violent attack or whatever it is, right? There is clearly no evidence of that. What you have is then the right-wing trolls on Twitter and social media, WhatsApp and so on, morphing pictures of her and making these sexual innuendos, making pornographic videos or pornographic images of her, and trying to say the worst they can say about her is she said she won't show her papers to prove citizenship, and now she won't tell us who is the father of the child whom she bears in her womb. That's a lie, of course. But even if it were not, who cares about whether or not Safura is kind of legally married and so on and so forth? That's not a crime. The point is she is, but that's not the crime. The crime is that you are imprisoning a pregnant woman during a pandemic and endangering her child. You are imprisoning a whole lot of other people, putting them into jails which are crowded, where they are vulnerable. So in a sense, for peaceful protest, you are putting people in risk of a death sentence. That is what India is doing today. That is what the Modi regime is doing today. There is a lot more that I could say, but let's leave it for discussions and for protests. I just want to make one last point, which is that among the crimes that were committed, actual crimes. So of course, the Delhi police and other police have not arrested those like Komal Sharma, who actually indulged in violence on camera. She was caught on camera rioting inside Delhi, inside JNU. She was not arrested. The police who went into Jamia Millia Islamia University and attacked a student studying in his library and damaged his eye. They blinded him. No action against them. No action against the police persons who beat Muslim youth, making them lie on the street. And Faizan, one of them who subsequently died, he was, with his dying breath, forced to sing India's beautiful national anthem, thereby shaming and insulting the anthem. No action against them. I could go on and on. There are n number of fake encounters. There are n number of shootings in Mangalore, in UP, all over the place by the police. And I'm talking about these crimes by the police as well as by the communal mobs and the BJP leaders, because in a way you have a system now, and I'll end by saying that. You have a system now where all of this is part of the system. You don't have a situation where the communal mobs are there and we citizens can go and ask for justice from the police or from the judiciary, because the judiciary and the police represent a system of justice. I think that what you have is a situation which the people in USA are protesting, and ours is the same situation now, where your criminal justice system, your system of policing, and even to such a large extent your judicial system is compromised. It has become an extension of the communal mob on the street and the communal mobs that are ruling inside parliament and ruling inside various assemblies. That is what we are up against. I would call it fascism, call it whatever you like, but certainly it is not the constitutional democracy that the freedom fighters of our country envisioned. It is certainly not that, and therefore we also need to find ways to fight. It's a pandemic, of course. It's difficult. Finding ways to fight where we can keep people safe is difficult, but I will still say that ways will be found and the struggle will continue.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಕಾಮ್ರೇಡ್ ಕವಿತಾ ಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಕಾಮ್ರೇಡ್ ಕಾಮ್ರೇಡ್ ಕವಿತಾ ಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದನ್ನ ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಈಗ ಅಮೆರಿಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಘಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಿದಾವೋ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಲಿಸಿ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಅಮೆರಿಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಿರೋದು ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋರು ಮತ್ತೆ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ನಡ್ಸೋರು ಈಗ ಜವಾಬ್ಗಳು ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಏನು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಜನರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ದೌರ್ಜನ್ಯ ನಡೀತಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಜಸ್ಟಿಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಏನು ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳಾಗಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ, ಅವರು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಹೊಣೆ ತಗೋಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದು ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ CA ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಏನು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಆ CA ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಯಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದು ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತ ಬಾಂಧವರನ್ನ. ಯಾವೊಂದು ಸಮುದಾಯ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಪ್ರಾಸಿಕ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತೋ ಅವ್ರನ್ನೇ ಸಹ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. CA ನಡೀತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ರೇಷನ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇದ್ರು ಸಹ, ಆಧಾರ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇದ್ರು ಸಹ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ನಾಗರಿಕರು, ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಪೌರರು ಅಂತ ಪರಿಗಣಿಸಲಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಇವತ್ತು ರೇಷನ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇರೋರು, ಆಧಾರ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇರೋರು ಸಹ ಅವ್ರು ಈ ದೇಶದವ್ರು ಆಗಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ರೇಷನ್ ಸಹ ನೀಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಆ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿಲಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಏನು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಜನವರಿ ಫೆಬ್ರವರಿಲೆಲ್ಲ, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಪೀಸ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗಳು ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಎಲ್ಲೂ ದೌರ್ಜನ್ಯ ನಡೀತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಶಹೀನ್ ಬಾಗು ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಲಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅದೇ ತರ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಲಾಲ್ ಬಾಗ್ ಇತ್ತು, ಅದೇ ತರ ಹಲವಾರು ಕಡೆ ಶಹೀನ್ ಬಾಗ್ ತರ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ರಸ್ತೆಗಳನ್ನ ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಶಹೀನ್ ಬಾಗಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಪೋರ್ಷನ್, ಒಂದು ರಸ್ತೆನ ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಅದರ ನಂತರ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಜನ ರಸ್ತೆಗೆ ಇಳಿದ್ರು, ನಿಜ, ಯಾರು ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಅಮೆರಿಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಟ್ರಂಪ್ ಅವರು ಕೆಲವು ಕಡೆ ಅಂಗಡಿಗಳು ಸುಟ್ಟಾಗಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಲೂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಸೊ ಶೂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಕೆಲವು ಘಟನೆಗಳನ್ನ ಎತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡಿದು ಇಡೀ ಒಂದು ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನ ಒಂದು ಕಪ್ಪು ಹೆಸರು ತರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಟ್ರು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಏನ್ ನಡ್ತಿದ್ದೋ ಅದೇನು ತಪ್ಪಾಗಿ ನಡೆದಿಲ್ಲ. ಜನರ ಒಂದು ಆಕ್ರೋಶನ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಜನ ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಪತ್ರಗಳು ಬರೆದು, MP ಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾತಾಡಿಸಿ, MLA ಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾತಾಡಿಸಿ, ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಸ್ಗಳು ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿ ಹೆಂಗಸರು, ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿರೋರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಏನೂ ಜರುಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತರನೂ ಸಹ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ದಾರಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಅವರು ಸಹ ಬೀದಿಗೆ ಬರ್ಬೇಕಾಯ್ತು. ಅದನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರು ಈ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಸಫೂರಾ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಜಾಮೀನ್ ಅರ್ಜಿ ಏನ್ ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಿದಾರೋ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಒಂದು ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲೂ ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಇರೋದೇನಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರೊಂದು ರಸ್ತೆನ ತಡೆದ್ರು ಅಂತ. ರಸ್ತೆ ತಡೆದು UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಒಂದು ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕಾ? ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಅವ್ರು ತಪ್ಪು ಮಾಡಿದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪ್ಲೇಯಿಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಫೈರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅವರು. ಶೀಸ್ ಪ್ಲೇಯಿಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಫೈರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಟ್ಟವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಡೆಲ್ಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಗನ್ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ದಾಳಿ ಮಾಡಿದವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಂಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಯಾರು ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಇದ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. CA ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ನಡೀತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಸೇರಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಕಡೆ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರಿಂದನೇ ಹಲವಾರು ತಪ್ಪುಗಳಾಗಿದೆ, ಫೇಕ್ ಎನ್ಕೌಂಟರ್ಗಳಾಗಿದೆ. ಜಾಮಿಯಾ ಮಿಲಿಯಾ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಒಬ್ರು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯ ಕಣ್ಣು ಸಹ ತೆಗೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಕ್ರಮ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಗೋಲಿ ಮಾರೋ ಸಾಲೋಕೋ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾರ ಮೇಲೆ ಕ್ರಮ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಳ್ದೆ ಯಾರು ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದಾರೆ ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ನಾವೇನ್ ಗಮನಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದು ಸಫೂರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಬಿಕ್ಕಿರೋ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಯಾರು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೋ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಈ ಬಲಪಂಕ್ತಿಯರು ಇಂಟರ್ನೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಕಡೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂಥರ ಲೈಂಗಿಕವಾಗಿ ಕಿರುಕುಳ ನೀಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಈಗ ಸಫೂರ್ ಅವರು ಬಸ್ರಿ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರ ತಂದೆ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮುಂಚೆ ಅವ್ರ ಪೇಪರ್ಸ್ ತೋರ್ಸಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಈಗ ಅವ್ರ ತಂದೆ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಮಗುವಿನ ತಂದೆ ಯಾರಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾರಿಗ ಏನಾಗ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಅದು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ವಿಷಯ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಸಫೀರ್ ಅವರು ಮದ್ವೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರ ಗಂಡ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಆ ವಿಷಯ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಚರ್ಚೆಗೆ ಬರ್ಬೇಕು? ಕಾಮ್ರೇಡ್ ಕವಿತಾ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಸಫೂರ್ ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಸಾಬೂತ್ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಕಿರುಕುಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಾಬೂತ್ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನೇ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಒಂದು ಸಾಬೂತ್ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಈಗ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಂಪುಗಳು, ಈಗ ಏನ್ ಮಾಬ್ಗಳು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು, ಗುಂಪುಗಳು ಬಂದು ದಾಳಿಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಗುಂಪುಗಳ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಅಥವಾ ಪೊಲೀಸರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ನಮ್ಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೇಳಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಏನ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಯಾಂಡಮಿಕ್ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಗನ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾರು ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ಗಳು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಇಟ್ಟರು ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಗೆ, ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಏನೋ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಂತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆದವ್ರು ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರು ಯಾರು ಗನ್ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು ಅವರು ಜಾಮೀನ್ ಅರ್ಜಿ ಬಂದಾಗ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರು ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಜಿನ ಅಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇವರು ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದಾರೋ ಅವ್ರ ಜಾಮೀನ್ ಅರ್ಜಿ ಬಂದಾಗ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವರು ಅದನ್ನ ಅಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇದ್ದು ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಸೋಂಕು ಇದ್ರೂ ಸಹ ನಾವು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ವು ಆ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗದೆ ಇದ್ರು ಸಹ ನಾವು ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆನ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವೇನು ಈ ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಉಳ್ಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟಿದೀವೋ, ಈ ಒಂದು ಆಂದೋಲನ ಕೈ ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೀವೋ ಅದನ್ನ ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗ್ಲೂ ನಾವು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅವ್ರ ಮಾತನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸಿದ್ರು. I now request Mr. Fawaz Shaheen of Quill Foundation to please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Vinay. Thanks a lot. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. This is a very critical time for all defenders of civil rights to be vigilant and to continuously keep organizing and questioning the government. And I would just like to thank all the friends present here for continuing to do that. The learned speakers before me, I think everything has already been covered. I would just like to add a few points to it. We have seen since the very beginning of this pandemic how a national health emergency has been subverted by the central government to as a cover to punish anti-CA NRC protesters all over the country. We know very well about the Delhi arrests. We know about the students of Jamia and the Pinjrator activists who have been arrested. But there are similar activists all over the country. In Allahabad, just recently, a student activist was released after 2 months in prison. He was arrested on the day of the Janta curfew on trumped up charges, and then his name was added to 4 different FIRs, and he was finally released on bail just this week. There are similarly organizers of protests of Shaheen Baghs all over the country who are facing FIRs, who are facing detention, and who have very little social capital or very little support the way that the more famous cases are getting. So we should be careful not to forget those friends all over the country who may not be so famous but who are equally staunch defenders of our civil liberties and who are facing the consequences from this government for it. However, I would like to speak more on the arrests of Jamia and Pinjratod activists because it seems to me that there is something more sinister happening over here. We have seen, just as Kavita Krishnan spoke before me, we all know who the instigators and perpetrators of the Delhi riots are. We know which union ministers were calling for people to fire at protesters. We know which political parties leaders were coming out in Northeast Delhi and giving ultimatums, asking people to move or they will resort to violence while the US president was visiting. And there were multiple such just in the run up to the Delhi violence at multiple locations. These kind of inciting speeches were made. Protest sites were protest sites were pelted with stones by pro-CAA protesters. We saw that spectacle for a whole day before the riots actually broke out. And all of that will definitely have been in part of the police's daily reports, part of the police's diary entries, that would all be part of a record. And what we are seeing now is a blatant attempt to subvert that record and to change the narrative of the Delhi riots, both in public eyes as well as in the police's own records and in court proceedings. Now, if you just look at how these arrests have unfolded, it's a very similar pattern to what we have seen with terror cases or UAPA cases in the past, where the police make sudden arrests. A few days before the arrest, there will be some leaked stories of interrogations, of the police being close to cracking a case. Immediately after the arrests, the police will start leaking stories to the media, insinuating some sort of forensic evidence that they have. In all, when Miran was arrested, Safura was arrested, Asif was arrested, in all these arrests, and then the Pinjrator members, the police kept leaking that they have some sort of forensic evidence or CDR records which show the presence of these people, etc., etc. So all of that is to create a public perception that the Delhi riots were actually conducted, actually instigated by Jamia, JCC members and Pinjrator activists, and not by the BJP leaders and other people we know to have instigated these riots. Also, if you look at Safura Zargar's bail judgment and the other students' bail judgments, you will see that all this supposed forensic evidence that they have been leaking to the media, none of it was presented in court. In fact, as Vinay and Kavita both said before me, in court, the bail, the rejection of Safura's bail application was primarily based on the fact that she has been accused. The court specifically said, we are not interested in the evidence that has been presented against Safura. We are only interested in seeing whether some offense was done. Not even whether Safura did the offense, whether the accused person did the offense. Some offense was done, and the police have charged somebody. So that was the basis for denying her bail request. And if you see UAPA, if you see particularly section 43D, clause 5 of the UAPA, you will see that actually the court was well within its rights to do so. The public prosecutor said in court that there is a legal embargo on the judge giving bail to Safura. And unfortunately, the public prosecutor was right, because the UAPA gives the court and the prosecution this power to indefinitely detain somebody under UAPA without presenting any evidence against them for a long period of time. If you look at section 43D, it clearly states that a judge cannot give bail to a person accused under UAPA if he thinks that prima facie, on the face of it, the allegations against them are true. And if you read the judgment, you will see that even though the defense has made many arguments, the defense has shown that there is no evidence as such linking Safura to the violence, and the judge has accepted that there is no evidence linking Safura to the violence. The judge didn't have to go into any of it. He simply said that the fact that an offense was committed, the fact that she has been linked by the prosecution to it, that is enough for her to be detained under UAPA. And that low bar is all it takes to detain somebody under this draconian law. It is not at all a surprise that her bail has been denied and the other activist bail has been denied. We should also be mindful here of they've not been charged with actually any offense under UAPA. If you look at the definition of unlawful activities, section 2O, I would try not to make this too legalistic, but if you just look at section 2O of the UAPA, its language includes any actions that invite disaffection against India, which is again very similar to the section 124A, the widely abused sedition provisions of the Indian Penal Code. It is actually almost exactly the same language. And again, this is something which is so vague, inviting disaffection, that it is, the very language is liable to be misused. And I know that when we teach about criminal law, or when we learn about criminal law in class and in our textbooks, we are told that section 124A has been read down, that in independent India, in constitutional India, nobody can be put in prison just for speaking their minds, that in order to invoke section 124A, you have to show that the accused has incited some people to some sort of violence, etc., etc. But if you look at these cases, if you look at Safura Zargar's case, if you look at this entire facade of prosecution in the Northeast Delhi riots, and in the whole litany of terror cases we have seen before them, you will see that this reading down of provisions by the Supreme Court has no meaning when it comes to the lower courts. I mean, ultimately, a few years later, 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, God forbid it's much longer, but when the court finally gives its decision, yes, it will be careful not to go against the Supreme Court's directives. But at these crucial stages, when a person's liberty is being determined, at these crucial stages when a person is detained, the wording of this law becomes very important. Even though the Supreme Court has read it down, even though the Supreme Court has said it can only be invoked if there is a direct incitement to violence, the court can say at this stage, we are not going into evidence. The language of the law is this. The language of the law says inviting disaffection. Prima facie, the police have accused Safura Zargar of inciting disaffection, and so we cannot give her bail. And this is perfectly justified under the legal regime that is created by UAPA. That is the whole problem with these provisions. From the very beginning, from as soon as the constitution came in, there was an instinct within the Supreme Court that there was an expectation within freedom fighters and civil liberties activists that all the draconian provisions, the colonial provisions of British era, would now be done away with, because we have fundamental rights, we have Article 19, we have Article 21. But the Supreme Court's instinct has always been not to do away with legal provisions, but to read them down, make them in consonance with the Constitution. And I believe 70 years of this experiment has proven that this is not at all a tenable exercise. It has proven that merely reading down some sections does not take away the abuse. In fact, what it has done is, even though much less number of people are convicted under sedition laws, very few people are convicted under UAPA, but the structure of these laws creates a justification for detaining people for long periods of time. Therefore, the entire process itself becomes the punishment. And I can say very confidently that even with these Northeast Delhi cases, the police has no intention to convict any of these people, and they will not be convicted by courts. They are only going to be detained for a long period. When finally the court decides on their case, because there is no evidence, of course they will be released. But by that time, they will have spent a long period in jail. They have already spent an unforgivable, for having committed no offense, being detained even one day is too much. And they've been detained for months and weeks now. And that is completely unjustifiable. But that is what these laws do. That is what UAPA does. It has created a structure and an architecture with which you can indefinitely detain people without evidence for long periods of time. Therefore, I think that when it comes to and in fact, it should be interesting for us to know that UAPA is also, just like the sedition law, it is also a remnant of the colonial era. Its origins lie in the Rowlatt Act of 1919, which, as we all know, protests over the Rowlatt Act led to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and how the Rowlatt Act was used during the first non-cooperation movement. The first version of UAPA was in fact passed during the Quit India movement by the British government to imprison Quit India movement activists. And I think if that is the case, it is historically fitting that the UAPA is now being applied by another draconian government, which is completely unmindful of people's civil liberties, against activists of a second freedom movement almost. And that is why I believe when it comes to UAPA, when it comes to 124A, we need, apart from all the things that we are doing, we really need to radically ask for a repeal of all these laws, for taking down UAPA and taking down Section 124A of IPC, because the Supreme Court's tactic of reading them down, of harmonizing them with constitutional provisions, that has no effect at the level of the trial courts, and that has in fact created a whole infrastructure where the process of UAPA and sedition laws is used as punishment. And in the end, I would just like to say, we need to be very mindful of how, in a very sinister and underhanded way, the Delhi police is trying to change the narrative of Delhi riots, how it is trying to pin the blame on activists from Jamia Millia Islamia and activists from Pinjra Tod and other groups. I'm sure I'm afraid actually that there may be many more arrests in the offing, and even though we are going to be, we fear that many more arrests might be coming in this while. I think these sort of meetings should continue. We need to continue to say that there is no evidence against these people. These people are innocent, and we know what will happen in a few months from now. They will either get bail or they will be released after being acquitted. But in that time, the narrative of Delhi riots would have been changed. In that time, the public perception around Delhi riots would have been changed. And that is essentially what the Delhi police is trying to do. This entire case is not about convicting somebody. It is just about punishing people by keeping them in jail for long periods. And the police could not be less concerned about what ultimately happens to this case. As long as these wonderful activists and students are forced to be detained for a long period of time. And in the end, I would just like to say that the use of these techniques is nothing new. The use of UAPA is nothing new. It is a time-tested method to keep innocent people for long periods of time without evidence in prison. And what we can do in such time, what we need to do in this time, is to constantly keep fighting back against this. There is one battle that must be fought at the public perception level, where we need to keep alive the memory of the Delhi riots, and also to keep alive the perpetrators of the Delhi riots. We need to keep reiterating who the real perpetrators are. We need to keep showcasing what the real evidence is and pushing back against this narrative. And also, we need to start making sure that all these other activists all over the country, whose cases may not be very famous, whose cases may not have gotten so much media attention, we reach out and we make sure that they have all the best legal help that is available, that we are able to fight back through legal means for all of their cases. And we also need to develop, as citizens collectives and as civil rights defenders, human rights defenders, we need to develop mechanisms for holding authorities to account. Now, this is another longer area, and there are significant impediments to it. There is section 197 of the CRPC, which bars filing complaints against police officers and things like that. There are, but where we have clear evidence, that a clear case where evidence has been fabricated, or a case like this where people have been dragged to prison without any evidence, we need to adopt some creative legal means. Maybe if we cannot file criminal cases, we need to at least file cases for compensation, cases under tort law. Everybody who has spent even a day after being wrongfully accused in jail must go back to the courts, must go back to the state and demand that the state should compensate them. The state should, although the denial of their liberty can not be compensated by anything, but the state must be as liable, and some sort of symbolic compensation must be given to them. Everyone who is detained for even a day without justification, who is wrongfully accused, we must make it a practice, we must make it a culture to support these people to go back to the courts and hold the state accountable for its actions. That is the only way to push back against this kind of widespread abuse. And until we start doing that, unfortunately, the legal architecture of UAPA and sedition laws is such that the police can hold people to account for long periods of time without any accountability. And this is not something which is very new. This is not something which is just happening now. We have seen since this, as I said before, UAPA was the first version of UAPA was brought in 1942 during the Quit India movement. And after it lapsed, it was brought back in 1967. And it was the whole purpose of bringing UAPA in 1967 was to ban certain organizations. Now, you know that under our constitution, there is Article 19, which gives you the fundamental right to freedom of association, to form organizations of your choice, to conduct these sorts of assemblies, protests, whatever, of your choice. And specifically in the 1960s, there was a push by the government to make an exception. So Article 19, Clause 4 was brought in by an amendment which placed reasonable restrictions on the right to freedom of association. And then UAPA was brought in as those restrictions. So the specific purpose of UAPA when it first came in was to ban certain organizations from functioning. This was a time when in the northeast of India, the government wanted to stop certain organizations from functioning. And since then, UAPA has always been deployed whenever the government has problems with an organization. Then UAPA is deployed to make that organization, declare that organization as unlawful. And the truly frightening thing about it, even from the 1960s, has been that there is almost no review of the government's powers under UAPA. The only review is by executive authorities themselves. I won't go into the technical details of it, but it is virtually an unchecked power. And the proof of it is that in the 53 years of its operation, not a single organization banned under UAPA, not a single order passed under Section 3 of UAPA, which gives for banning of organizations, has ever been overturned. The only orders which were overturned in 1994 were by the Supreme Court, and that was it was against Jamaat-e-Islami and RSS. They had been banned after the Babri Masjid riots, and the only orders that have ever been overturned are by the Supreme Court, and that was just once in the entire history of UAPA. Apart from that, the UAPA's own internal mechanisms have never overturned any order of the government, and it is virtually an unchecked power in the hands of the government to ban any organization. And after that, as the war on terror came in, the Vajpayee government has brought in the POTA law, Prevention of Terrorist Activities. We all know about it. We all know how POTA was widely misused. In 2004, when the UPA government came to power, they took away POTA, they repealed POTA, but then 6 months later, they brought in amendment and put in all provisions of POTA in UAPA. So now UAPA is this combined anti-terror law, and it is not like POTA and TADA, which were exceptional laws that had to be renewed. UAPA is very much like IPC. It is a regular part of criminal law now, and the UAPA has been very cleverly drafted. There is no provision that explicitly violates procedural freedoms, but there are provisions that enhance investigative powers. For instance, you can detain somebody under UAPA for 6 months without filing a charge sheet, which is usually what happens. At least 6 months. Before 6 months, then no court even entertains a bail petition. And then even after that, you have, as I said before, Section 43D, Clause 5 of UAPA, which puts an embargo on it disempowers the court from granting bail in UAPA cases. And we have seen over the last 16 years how bail has become virtually impossible under UAPA. And in that same period, you can see that the conviction rate of UAPA has never gone beyond 15, 16, 20% at most. And that has also been very recently when the NIA was brought in and new amendments to the NIA Act were made. So that is another, that is maybe a discussion for another day. But the conviction rate of UAPA has never been more than 20%, which means 80% of people under UAPA are acquitted by the court, by the lower courts. And then a lot of the people who would be convicted maybe acquitted later on at the higher court stages. So clearly UAPA has been abysmal in bringing any actual terrorists or any actual people involved in violence to justice. It has mostly been used as a tool to detain people for long periods of time without providing any justification. And what we are seeing now is just a confirmation and a continuation of that same trend. Earlier, it has been people in the name of Islamic terrorism, or we have seen people in the whole Bhima Koregaon case, how activists and important dissenting voices have been silenced using UAPA. This is a continuation of the same tactics. People who were passionately involved in the anti-CAA protests, who were visible and who were gathering a following, they have been punished for their activism, for raising their voices. And once again, innocent people have been put in prison for unjustifiable periods of time using this draconian and colonial framework of anti-terror law. I think I'll just pause there. I hope this hasn't been too much of an information overload. And I think Vinay told me there would be questions or discussions later on, so we can take up any questions if there are later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Fawaz. That was definitely enlightening, and it was not an information overload. In fact, there is an information gap as far as UAPA is concerned, so therefore it was good. ಫವಾಜ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಸಂಕ್ಷಿಪ್ತವಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಈಗ. ಫವಾಜ್ ಅವರು ಮೊದಲು ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಒಂದೇ ನಿಮಿಷ. ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಸ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನ, ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಜನ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ತಿಳಿದಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವ್ರ ಹೆಸರುಗಳು ತಿಳಿದಿದೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರನ್ನ, ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಗಳು ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತೂ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರು ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಫೇಮಸ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರನ್ನೂ ಸಹ ಬಂಧನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮರಿಬಾರ್ದು, ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಸಹ ನಾವು ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಈ ಒಂದು ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ. ಬಟ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಭೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಈ ಪಿಂಜರಾತೋಡ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜಾಮಿಯಿಂದ ಯಾರು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆದ್ರು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಫೋಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿಲಿ ಏನು ಕೋಮು ಗಲಭೆ ನಡೀತಲ್ಲ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಅದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ, ಅದು ಕೋಮು ಗಲಭೆ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮುಸ್ಲಿಂ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ನಡೆದ ಗಲಭೆ ಅಂತಾನೆ ನಾವು ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಆ ಗಲಭೆಗಳು ನಡೆಯಕ್ ಮುಂಚೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ಸ್ಪೀಚ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅದು ಗಲಾಟೆ ಆಗೋ ತರ ಸ್ಪೀಚ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಜನ ಶಾಂತಿಯುತವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ಲುಗಳನ್ನ ಎಸೆಯಲಾಯ್ತು. ಈ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಅದನ್ನ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವರು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಿ ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಸೋಂಕು ಬಂದಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಸಹ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಜನನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಮುಂಚೆ ಸಹ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅವ್ರು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅದೊಂಥರ ಪ್ಯಾಟರ್ನ್ ಇದೆ. ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಕ್ ಮುಂಚೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮೀಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ಸ್ ನ ಲೀಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಇಂಥವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಸಬೂತ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ, ಇಂಥವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಇದ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಂತರ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ನಂತರನೂ ಸಹ ನಾವು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಈ ಸಬೂತ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾವ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಗಮನಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇವ್ರೇನ್ ಸಬೂತ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದಾರಲ್ಲ, ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಪ್ರಕರಣಗಳು ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಆ ಸಬೂತ್ನ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಡ್ಲಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಸಫೂರಾ ಅವ್ರ ಪ್ರಕರಣದಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಮುಂದೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಡಿಫೆನ್ಸ್ ಟೀಮ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ಜಡ್ಜ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಜಾಮೀನ್ ಅರ್ಜಿನ ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಜಾಮೀನ್ ಅರ್ಜಿನ ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದು ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ನಾನು ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಈಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಕೃತ್ಯ ನಡೆದಿದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ, ಅಫೆನ್ಸ್ ನಡೆದಿದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ, ಅಫೆನ್ಸ್ ನಡೆದಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ನೋಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಅದು ಸಫೂರಾ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ವೋ ಅಂತಾನೂ ಸಹ ನೋಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಂಡ್ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾವ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಜಡ್ಜು ಆ ರೀತಿ ನಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಪ್ರಾಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಆ ರೀತಿ ನಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ UAPA ಕಾಯ್ದೆ ಪವರ್ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. UAPA ಕಾಯ್ದೆಯ ಕಲಂ 43D ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಅವ್ರ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅವರು ಈ ರೀತಿ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ನೋಡ್ದೇನು ಸಹ ಅವರು ಜಾಮೀನ ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಬಹುದು. ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ಕಾಯ್ದೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಯಾವ್ದೋ ಒಂದು ಕೃತ್ಯ ಅಂತ ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನ ಇದೆಯೋ ಕಲಂ 2O ನಲ್ಲಿ, ಒಂದು ಜನರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೋಪ ತರಂತ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಒಂದು ಕೃತ್ಯಗಳು ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವ್ದೇ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳು ಅಫೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ತಗೋಬಹುದು. ಏನು ಸೆಡಿಷನ್ ಕಾನೂನು, ರಾಜದ್ರೋಹದ ಕಾನೂನು ಅಂತ ನಾವೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, IPC ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ 124A, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ಇದೇ ತರ ಇದೆ. ಹಲವಾರು ಲಾ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಜನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ 124A ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಆ ಕಾನೂನು ಇದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ರೀಡ್ ಡೌನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ರೀಡ್ ಡೌನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದರದ್ದು ಪವರ್ ತೆಗಿಲಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ. ಫವಾಜ್ ಅವ್ರ ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ರೀತಿಯ ಕಾನೂನ್ನ ತೆಗೆಯಿದೆ, ಅದ್ರ ಸುಮ್ನೆ ಪವರ್ ತೆಗೆದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ನಮ್ಮ ಮ್ಯಾಜಿಸ್ಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್, ಸೆಷನ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಲೋವರ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಈ ರಾಜದ್ರೋಹ ಸೆಡಿಷನ್ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಯಾವ್ದೋ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರೊಸೀಜರ್ಸ್ ಫಾಲೋ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ರೀತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಈ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳನ್ನ ತೆಗಿದೆ, ಬರೀ ಅದನ್ನ ರೀಡ್ ಡೌನ್ ಮಾಡಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ತೆಗಿಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವ್ ಏನ್ ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇದು ರೌಲಟ್ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು, ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಒಂದು ಕಾಯ್ದೆ ಇದು. ರೌಲಟ್ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ನಾವು ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಜಲಿಯನ್ ವಾಲಾ ಬಾಗ್ ಏನಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಆಗ ರೌಲಟ್ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ವಿರೋಧವಾಗಿ ಜಲಿಯನ್ ವಾಲಾ ಬಾಗ್ ನಡೀತು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಕ್ವಿಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ, ಕ್ವಿಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಚಳವಳಿ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಹೋರಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೋ ಅವ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಈ UAPA ತರ ಕಾಯ್ದೆ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಲಾಯ್ತು. ಸೊ ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಈಗಲೂ ಸಹ ಸಂವಿಧಾನನ ಉಳಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಇದು ಹಾಕ್ಲಾಗಿದೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ರೇನ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರು, ನಾವು ಈ ರೀತಿ ಸಭೆಗಳು ಇವತ್ತೇನ್ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆವು, ಈ ರೀತಿ ಸಭೆಗಳನ್ನ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸಬಾರ್ದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನಾಕಾರರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಸಬೂತ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಪದೇ ಪದೇ ನಾವ್ ಎತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡಿಬೇಕು. ಇವರು ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರೋದು ಯಾರನ್ನೇ ಕನ್ವಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅವ್ರ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಬದಲಿಗೆ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ CAA ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನೊಂದು ನರೇಟಿವ್ ಇದೆ ಅಥವಾ ಏನ್ ಜನ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದಾರಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಕತೆ ಏನಿದೆ ಅದನ್ನ ತಿರ್ಗಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವರು. ಈ ಇಡೀ ಒಂದು 2-3 ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಜನನ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ನಂತರ ಈ CAA ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕಪ್ಪು ಹೆಸರನ್ನ ಹಾಕ್ಲಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಗಲಭೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾರು ಮಾತಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಆ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಮುಸ್ಲಿಮರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಮಾಡಿರೋ ಗಲಭೆನ ನಾವು ಮರಿಬಾರ್ದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಾರ ಗಲಭೆಗಳು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ನೆನಪು ಸಹ ನಾವು ಜನಗಳಿಗೆ ಪದೇ ಪದೇ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಮಿಕ್ಕಿರೋ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನನು ಸಹ ಜೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಅವರು ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಫೇಮಸ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಅವ್ರ ಪರವಾಗೂ ಸಹ ನಾವು ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವ್ ಈ ಏನ್ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು ನಡೀತೀಯೋ ಅದ್ರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳು, ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತೆ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನೊಂದು ಅಕೌಂಟಬಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಡಕ್ಕೂ ಸಹ ನಾವು ಫೈಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ಸೆಕ್ಷನ್ 187 CRPC ನಲ್ಲಿ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಕಂಪ್ಲೇಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ಇದೆ. ಆದ್ರೂ ಸಹ ಈಗ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ನೇ ಇವರು ಸುಳ್ಳು ಸಾಬೂತ್ನ ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ರೀತಿ ಕ್ರಿಯಾಶೀಲವಾಗಿ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ನಾವು ಫೈಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ಜೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಿದ್ರೋ ಅವ್ರು ಆಚೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಕಾಂಪೆನ್ಸೇಷನ್, ಒಂದು ಪರಿಹಾರಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಕೇಸ್ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಆ ರೀತಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ನಂತರ UAPA ಬಗ್ಗೆನೇ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅವರು ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಸಹ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಹೆಂಗೆ 1967 ಅಲ್ಲಿ UAPA ಬಂದಿದ್ದು, ನಂತರ ಸಂವಿಧಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೇನು ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಕಟ್ಟಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹಕ್ಕಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಹಕ್ಕಿನ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ರೀಸನಬಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ಆ ರೀಸನಬಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ಈ UAPA ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ತಗೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ UAPA ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಆರ್ಡರ್ಗಳಾಗಿದ್ರು ಸಹ ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ಒಳಗಡೆನೆ ಈ ಆರ್ಡರ್ಗಳು ಸರಿಗಿದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ವೋ ಅಂತ ಪರಿಶೀಲಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ UAPA ಒಳಗಡೆನೆ ಒಂದು ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಮೆಕ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಇದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಮೆಕ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಅದು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಆರ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಅದು ಇದಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಇಂದ ಮಾತ್ರ ಆಗಿರೋದು. ಅದು ಒಂದು. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋದು, UPA ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಪೋಟಾ ಕಾನೂನು ಏನಿತ್ತು, ಆ ಪೋಟಾ ಕಾನೂನ್ನ ತೆಗೆದು ಅದು UAPA ಒಳಗಡೆ ಸೇರಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಸೊ UAPA ಒಂದು ಕಂಬೈನ್ಡ್ ಕಾನೂನಾಗಿದೆ. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗಮನಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋದು, ಪೋಟಾ ಅಥವಾ ಟಾಡಾ ಆ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳನ್ನ ರಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಿತ್ತು, ಅದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಆದ್ರೆ UAPA ಆ ರೀತಿ ಅಲ್ಲ. UAPA IPC ತರ ಕಾನೂನು, ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೈರಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಶಗಳು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅದು ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡೋ ತರ ಅಂಶಗಳಿದೆ, ಜನಗಳ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಕಾಪಾಡೋ ಅಂತ ಅಂಶಗಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ನೀವು 6 ತಿಂಗಳಾದ್ರೂ ನೀವು ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಶೀಟ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಆಗದೆ ಜನಗಳನ್ನ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇಡ್ಬೋದು. ಮತ್ತೆ UAPA ಒಳಗಡೆ ಕನ್ವಿಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಹ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಜನ ಕನ್ವಿಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರೋದು. ಸುಮಾರು 15ರಿಂದ 17% ಜನ ಕನ್ವಿಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಆ ಸುಮಾರು 80%ಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಜನನ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ ಲೋವರ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್. ಯಾರನ್ನ ಕನ್ವಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾರೋ ಅವರು ಸಹ ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಹೈಯರ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಸಹ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಫವಾಜ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಈಗ ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಬಂದಿದೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ನಾನು ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ ನೌ ಅಂಡ್ I'll just go in the order of which the questions were sent. Comrade Kavita, we had sent some questions to you also in chat. We'll just read that out to you again so that this can be taken. One is that when dissenting voices are suppressed and courts are not upholding human rights and majority of the people are silent spectators, what should be our remedy? And tied to that is the fact that given that for 3 months all minds are also in lockdown, how do we move forward this protest when all these kind of political, economic and social crises are happening? These two questions are to Comrade Kavita, and then there are some questions to Fawaz as well. We'll take that later on. Comrade Kavita, just once again for the audience, you can send any questions on Zoom chat or on YouTube. You can drop it as a comment. Over to you, Comrade Kavita.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Vinay. Just let me try and answer those. That's exactly the problem. I think the questions that have been asked, the first one was, I think you said it was
Comrade Kavita, we're not able to hear you. I think your audio is paused. Hello? Are you able to hear us? I think there is a problem with her internet. While we wait for her to come back, like there was also a question for like in terms of Fawaz, before we go to you, maybe we'll take this question to like, and then like we can come back with the UAPA questions also. There are a bunch of questions. Like the question for you was how to move ahead with the CAA protests. Given the current scenario, how to move ahead with the CAA protests. I'll just unmute. Yeah, like if you could unmute and just speak.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. So see, because of pandemic and this COVID issue and all, it is not advisable to come out onto the streets because there are social distancing norms and still threat is on head. But there are many other means to protest democratically. One such is the webinar what we are doing now. We are interacting with many people, and judicial means we can take. We can make social media campaigns. Through that, we can pressurize the regime. Various people we can tag on Twitter campaigns. We can do all these things. We need to do at this moment, especially against this witch hunting of activists, against this witch hunting of students, because the esteemed guest, what the other are there, those who have also mentioned, a very important point is that they want to build a narrative. Just they are putting behind the bars, they're lapsing the time, and they want to build a narrative. They want to build a narrative with which they want to justify that the one uh, who were there against this Citizenship Amendment Act, or who were protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Act, they were the one those who have done the violence in Delhi. This is the narrative what they want to do. They want to build in Delhi, especially, and we should not allow that, because everyone knows, as already it is been said, that everyone knows that who are the culprits. Everyone knows who are behind all these violence. What has happened in Delhi? We know who have instigated this violence. We know what are those politicians who have given the speeches with which this violence has been instigated. Everyone knows that. It's very clear. It's already there in media. Everyone knows that. People have debated it. People have discussed it. But the way present government and the way the police want to build a narrative is very dangerous. The thing that what they want to do is just that those who were against this Citizenship Amendment Act, those who were protesting against this anti-constitutional bill, were the one who did the violence. This is wrongful narrative. We need to resist it strongly, and we need not have to allow at any cost to build this narrative, especially in context of Delhi.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Comrade Kavita, I'll unmute you. Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, as I was saying, I wanted to briefly mention something else, which is that in Assam, also the misuse of, I mean, the use of UAPA to silence dissent, especially to target anti-CA protesters, that's also a very major phenomenon there. The latest is that one person, one activist called Bittu Sonowal, he has been booked under UAPA by the NIA for saying Lal Salam and Comrade, and for uploading Lenin's photo on social media, and for having on him books like The Communist Manifesto and An Introduction to Socialism. So what, absolutely, I think that what Fawad said, all that he elaborated about the UAP, that's spot on. So what do we do? What are the ways in which we can protest? Frankly, I think that what we are witnessing in the USA now, what India does need is that kind of energy in order to get not only our activists and fighters for democracy, fighters for the constitution freed, but also actually to demand some kind of systemic change. Systemic change is that um, the complete repeal of these draconian laws like the UAPA or the PSA or the sedition law and so many other draconian laws. And also, along with the repeal of laws, also a complete change in the structure of the police, and some better ways in order to achieve police's accountability. Here, I would like to say that I believe that all the talk about police reform till now has largely been dominated in India by former policemen who have not really been talking about, they have been talking about freeing the police from political power. They have not been talking about making the police accountable to the constitution. So they have not been making things like fake encounters and custodial torture, custodial killings, all of these which are the norm in India. They have not been talking, and false arrests, blaming people on nonsensical charges. All of these things have not really been made an issue. And how do we make them an issue? I don't think that they can be made an issue through the courts and through the usual methods alone. I believe that we do need a mass movement, and there is really no easy way to do that. There is no shortcut to do that. It's a hard trudge, it's a hard struggle, but we have to continue to find ways to do. Yeah.
Thank you, comrade. Fawaz, over to you for the next set of questions. I'll unmute you. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Vinay. And I think we have you've sent me the questions on chat, so I'll just start taking them one by one. I think even we've all been saying that we do need to start focusing on repeal of UAPA definitely, but there is something we also need to understand. It is not as if repealing UAPA will be some sort of a magic rod that makes our police civil rights friendly. Definitely, we have to push for its repeal. That is part of it. The kind of extraordinary powers it has given is completely nonsensical. It is absurd. And in fact, it's one thing which I missed to mention in the previously, section 15 of the UAPA. If you just look at that section, it defines unlawful activities, and it's basically a whole list of actions, everything from blocking a road to murder to exploding a bomb. It's a whole list of crimes. And the interesting part is everything mentioned as an offense under UAPA is also an offense in normal criminal law. So if anybody explodes a bomb in a public square, you don't need the UAPA to prosecute them. You have IPC. So the whole argument that we need these laws to deal with this new age terrorism, that whole argument is absurd. Regular criminal law is enough to deal with all criminal activities, including terrorist activities. UAPA doesn't punish those criminal activities. It punishes certain streams of thought, certain ways of thinking, and certain identities. That is so. Under Section 15, now, if a murder is committed, or if a bomb goes off, or a road is blocked, who will decide that UAPA will be invoked or IPC will be invoked? Of course, that is left up to the discretion of the officers. So you are already saying that for the same offense, for the same act, different offenses can be charged. You can be charged under different offenses, under different sections for the same act. This gives that kind. So the call is made by a police officer based on who the accused is. If the accused is a Muslim, if the accused is a leftist intellectual, if the accused is a protester. So ideology and identity are what is criminalized by anti-terror laws, not specific criminal acts. We need to, especially for the lawyers and our fellow students of law over here, we need to stress back to some sort of purity of criminal law, that normal criminal law is enough to deal with these offenses. This proliferation of special laws and draconian laws, I mean, quite apart from its infringement of civil liberties, it is a distortion and a mutation of criminal law that is fundamentally problematic. And now, on the question of repeal of UAPA, definitely for all of the reasons mentioned above, we want a repeal, but we must remember that just repealing UAPA will not be enough. Repeal of UAPA has to be part of a campaign to make the police more sensitive to democratic norms and to civil rights. And right now, the whole attitude of the police is that human rights is an irritant. Civil liberties are something which come in their way. That whole attitude needs to be changed. And the strongman fetishes that we have, which have led to this bloated and overly powerful police force, we need to somewhere or the other address those tendencies too. Without that, simply repealing UAPA will have no effect. There are enough provisions in CRPC and normal criminal law for maybe not this much of abuse, but for significant degrees of abuse of powers. So that is, I hope that's something we take very seriously. Also, I mean, there was a question, when these people come out, should they file back rights violation cases? I think I kind of tried to address that earlier. saying that even though criminal cases are difficult, we should try holding them liable, at least under tortious liability, civil liability in courts for the loss of opportunity, loss of income, whatever, loss of reputation that has happened because of these arrests. We should try and hold them liable, if not in criminal court, then at least in civil courts through tortious liability. That is one litigation tact which we can consider. And brief chronology of UAPA protest also. Also, there have been questions regarding why uh, uh, no UAPA has been invoked in this or that state. That is again something I would say different police forces adopt different tactics. UAPA is one time-tested tactic. Another is NSA, which the UP government regularly employs. NSA is even worse than UAPA. It basically there is, so in UAPA at least you have to go before a judge to be denied bail. In NSA it is again a tribunal. You can be detained for up to 6 months for unspecified offenses, and that is something just yesterday Aligarh district administration invoked NSA against 3 people. Dr. Kafil Khan has been in prison since January for basically doing for nothing, for no offense. He's been in prison because of NSA. NSA was invoked on him on the day he got bail. So he was charged under IPC for hate speech, for a speech he made in Aligarh Muslim University, which had no hate. I mean, it was a perfectly valid, in fact, a speech that invoked the constitution more times than maybe even necessary. But for that speech, he was booked for making a hate speech. And the day he got bail, he was booked under the NSA, and basically he could never leave prison. So there are different. The state applies different tactics in different places, depending on the government, depending on the situation. Now, there's a question regarding what is the status of case against CA, which was filed in Supreme Court. That case has not come up for hearing, I think, since March, since this pandemic has started. Before that, we were seeing 4-week, 6-week delays. And I think that was the general idea was the Supreme Court did not seem inclined to listen to the anti-CA petitions with any seriousness. Just before this whole COVID pandemic struck, a number of cases were also filed challenging the NPR process, because CA is a thing which comes later on. The starting of the National Register of Citizens is with the making of the National Population Register, which was it was scheduled to start in April, and it only got delayed because of the pandemic. So a batch of petitions was also filed to put a stay on the NPR, because not only were those petitions challenging NPR, but the whole section, a whole amendment to Citizenship Act, which brought in provisions for NPR and NRC. That whole provision was also challenged way back in 2006, and that has been pending in the Supreme Court for all this while now. There was a challenge to Section 6 of the amended Section 6 of the Citizenship Act, which has not been resolved. So because of that, a stay was asked, but that case could never be heard. However, I'm not very hopeful from the Supreme Court putting a stay on CAA, because we have seen the court has adopted a practice of presenting fiat accompli, where they will go ahead and they will allow some, just like with the Aadhaar, they didn't stop it, they didn't say it was constitutional, they just let it happen. And when so much coverage had happened, so many people had been covered, there was no point striking it down. There's something similar I think they intend to do with the NPR. Till the process is completed, I don't think they're even going to properly listen to the petitions. Some people are asking to share some readings on the history of UAPA. I will do that. I think after this meeting, I'll share some readings that I have with the ALF friends, and they can share with the others. There's an excellent article last year that was written by Manisha Sethi, which was in the context of UAPA tribunals, the banning of organizations under UAPA, and that actually takes a good historical look at UAPA. One interesting thing to bear in mind is that UAPA was after 1942 Quit India movement, when it lapsed in 1962, Pandit Nehru constituted a National Integration Council, and the Integration Council suggestion was to bring in a law like UAPA so that organizations that are a threat to unity, I mean, it was essentially a tool to proscribe organizations that the state was uncomfortable with. And we have seen since 1967 regularly any organization that a state has a problem with has been banned under UAPA. That is another tendency we have to look at. This whole idea of banning organizations, it is abhorrent to the very concept of freedom of association. And if an organization is indulging in criminal activities, particular criminal acts need to be punished. An entire organization cannot be banned. An entire ideology, no matter how much we disagree with an ideology or an organization, they have a right to exist, they have a right to freedom of association, and they cannot be banned simply for holding that ideology and those rights. Vinay, I think if I haven't answered any of the questions, could you please point me to them? I think I've tried to.
Yeah, there are some more questions, which will I'll just read out the questions. This is for all the participants, and we can also go in order of participants. So one question was that so a lot of these arrests have happened in Delhi, UP, and Assam, etc. So from cities like Bangalore or like states like Karnataka, what is it that we can do from here in order to mount pressure? The point about the narrative is well taken, but what else is it that we can do to put pressure? The second question is that is it possible to mobilize international opinion, put pressure to change our laws and free the detainees? And the third question is, I'm just reading out all the questions for all the panelists, and then each person can go one by one. The third question is, are police in India, is there a requirement that they have to undergo a bias training? And is it worthwhile to ask the Aam Aadmi Party, a party in clear opposition to BJP, or should we rely completely on civil activism? I've just read out all the questions. If you could go in the order of participants, like first, and then Comrade Kavita, and then Fawaz.
Hello. Yeah, regarding that, how we have to run a movement and all those things in order to respond to these witch hunting. So I have already spoken about it. But as you have mentioned about international advocacy or international pressure, then certainly, because it's a violation of human rights, it's a violation of constitutional rights, and India is also a signatory to many international agreements. So we need to properly channelize the things, and we need to properly send into the different forums, international forums, wherein these things can be debated, and there can be an international pressure also. And beside to that, as you have mentioned that these things are happening in Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Assam, and what about the other states, especially southern part of India, how they can respond to it? Yes, certainly, when these things are happening in those states, that doesn't mean that it is just targeting to that particular individuals or people of those particular states, but it is directly assault onto the constitution of this country. It's directly an assault onto the judiciary. See the way the Supreme Court is working, the way the high courts are working, especially yesterday's case, we can see the way the responses are. So it is not only of Delhi, or it is not only of Uttar Pradesh or Assam. UAPA is a national issue, and everyone across the country need to come ahead and respond to it. And I think hardly 6 to 8 months back, there was an amendment in UAPA, NSA, and all those things. These were the amendments made, which made it possible to trap the individuals, trap the activists, and make it legally very much validated. So these were the things which have been done at that time. People have protested at that time also against the UAP and all those things. But there was no response from the government. There was no response from anyone else. But the way the UAPA is now being misused. the same act which has been amended, it is being misused now against these all anti-CA protesters. So there should be a national movement. Everyone across the country, from the states where there may not be any detention, there also the voice should, from there also the voice should come. Maybe they are not the victim at this moment, but maybe they may be in the future. So it's a national issue, and everyone across the country should take it and should respond to it.
All right. Thank you, Laik. Comrade Kavita.
I just want to respond actually to the last question that you asked about, somebody asked about the Aam Aadmi Party, because I'm sorry to disillusion you that that is very, very far from the situation now. The Aam Aadmi Party in its new term is completely on board with whatever the BJP plans on this front in particular. During the Northeast Delhi violence as well, communal violence as well, their role was pretty abysmal. But even worse than that is the fact that they have signed on for people like Tushar Mehta to be the special public prosecutor in the Northeast Delhi riots case, which means, essentially signing on to allowing, saying that we are okay with a complete mockery of justice in these cases. And while their own, Aam Aadmi Party leader Tahir Hussain has been completely illegally and totally unjustly accused of fomenting the riots, whereas in fact he was only defending himself, if at all. I mean, his house was, he could have been a second Ehsan Jafri. We don't know it. I don't think he himself also was involved in any particular act of self-defense, but the point is that his life was in danger. So I think that the Aam Aadmi Party's situation right now is extremely of concern, because it points towards a nearing, towards the consensus. And I also want to say here, while we are at it, that you see so many of these laws that Fawaz, outlined so well, where were they, who brought them into being? Most of them were brought into being. These weapons that fascism is using now are weapons that were crafted and sharpened during Congress regimes, during UPA regimes. So unfortunately, while of course our fight right now has to be primarily, there's no, what about it? There's no equation. The BJP government, the BJP regime, the Modi regime, Amit Shah as home minister, that is a very, very specific thing which we are up against and we must fight. But at the same time, our fight must have an ultimate goal of, demanding some kind of systemic change. The change can't just be that we allow, and here that's what I wanted to briefly mention here, in light of what Fawaz was saying about, even after repeal, so what? Well, I wanted to remind that TADA was repealed. And yet, even after the repeal of TADA, those who were convicted under TADA detainees and TADA convictions that took place, including those of the Kisan organization associated with my party, the CPIML, and they were arrested on ridiculous charges. They were convicted on ridiculous charges, and the Supreme Court upheld those convictions. And one of the main leaders there, Shah Chand, he died while still in jail in custody, and several other detainees are still undergoing life sentences under a law that has been repealed. And the only reason they were arrested was because they had Marxist and Kisan Sabha literature on them. That's it. So, yeah, I just wanted to address that.
Thank you. Over to you, Fawaz, for the last.
I mean, Marxist literature is one thing, and we should know that in a case in Madhya Pradesh, even a Persian translation of the Gita has been presented as unlawful or dangerous literature. So I don't know what they're trying to tell us. So, but seriously, there was a question regarding international pressure for repeal of UAPA as well as release of our friends in prison. Definitely, there is a rights conscious international body, international opinion, a rights conscious community that has been responding to it. You must have seen a number of statements, a number of questions have come from the European Union, from bodies and special rapporteurs associated with the UN. So that support from the international rights community has definitely come, and I mean, in whatever little ways, I'm sure it will be helpful. But it can always be increased, it can always be used in better ways. But we should also remember that the rights community is not the only international pressure working on government. The anti-terror laws we are talking about are also the result of a different kind of international pressure. Immediately after 9/11, the UN Security Council passed a resolution on 28th September, which is what gave us POTA, which is what is cited by the government to give us amendments to the UAPA. So and also now, if you want to see the real mover of international pressure, you shouldn't look to the UN, you should look to the Financial Action Task Force. It's where global moneyed interest now moves legislation and influence. And the FATF pressure is what brought the latest UAPA amendment. You'd see the last two reports, India compliance reports. FATF, by the way, is not an international legal body. It is an informal task force, an economic grouping of countries that has enormous outsized power, because it can place sanctions or it can direct the flow of foreign direct investment, etc. And in the compliance reports that India filed with FATF in in the last compliance report, it said that the amendments we brought in 2012 were to comply with FATF guidelines, and there are certain amendments. FATF told India that you still have some ways to go. And the recent amendments which were brought in 2019 in this last session, they were those amendments which FATF asked India to bring in. So there are other international pressures other than the rights community that also act on the government. So it's not as if international pressure is this one single linear thing that is good for us. There are also some problematic, and especially there is an opinion in international circles now that criminal law needs to be strengthened to deal with these pesky pro-democracy civil rights activists and ensure a better flow, a better development of globalization, etc., etc. So that whole idea is also there. We must be mindful of it, and we must also be mindful that this government is actually very attuned to those interests, which is also why we must keep on putting, I mean, whatever efforts we can make internationally, but the pressure of rights community does not apply very much to this government, because it is attuned to some other international interests that that cushion it from those sort of rights groups. So we must be also aware of the limits of international advocacy, and there is no replacement for domestic political action and the legal remedial actions we can take in court. Ultimately, these are cases which will be decided in court. These are battles we have to fight in courts. And somebody talked about bias training of our police. There have been experiments with this sort of thing in our judicial academies as well as police academies. I'm not sure how much. So every time this sort of thing happens, NHRC also says train the police, give them trainings, and the police also makes a big show of bringing in human rights activists to conduct these big seminars. I really don't know how much of an effect it has, because as long as there is a political constituent, a political will to do these kinds of for this kind of discrimination to exist, as long as there is political capital that allows it to exist, training of police will not be enough. What we really need is a change in that. Unless there is political will to remove discrimination, systemic discrimination, training modules will not be enough to deal with this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers and to all the participants. These are all the questions that we had. And we are definitely at a challenging time. And I think the points, especially about one, fighting the issues in the criminal justice system, whether it is through laws like UAPA or just the practice of criminal law in this country, the fact that we have to change the narrative. We have to keep the memory of the riots, the fact that we have to build a mass movement, and that there is no alternative other than working hard. These are all the points I think that all of us need to take it forward. ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ನಮ್ಮ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಏನು ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷಣಕಾರರು ಹೇಳಿರೋದು ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ ಗಲಭೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಏನಾಗಿದೆಯೋ, ಯಾರು ಗಲಭೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಹೆಸರುಗಳು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಎತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡಿಯೋದು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ UAPA ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳು ಏನಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅದನ್ನ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಬದಲಾಯಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಫೋಕಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಗಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಒನ್ಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಐ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ಸ್ for their time. I thank all the participants for participating, and we'll definitely be in touch, and we'll take the struggle forward. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vinay.